meeting of the year for 2022. Welcome back to school. I hope that the first week went off very well, and we're glad to see administrators, educators, and students joining us, as well as community members. We welcome you. At this time, we would like to remind you that the Open Meetings Act statutes and rules are on the back wall, and we invite anyone who is a member of our community that would like to address the board to please come forward now. I did not see any forms submitted for public forum, but I did want to pause for a moment to ensure if anyone would like to address the board at this time, you may do so. Seeing none, we are called to order here right at 6 p.m. Once again, welcome everybody. This is our organizational board meeting, so we will begin the evening with the election of our slate of officers. We will begin with the office of President of the Board of Education, and Jody will be recording our, of course, nominees and work about that. And I invite at this time nominations for the office of President of the Board of Education.
I would like to nominate Mark Byers.
Thank you. Mark Byers has been nominated as President of the Board of Education. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, all in favor, Mark Byers serving as President of the Board of Education for 2022, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say aye. And congratulations, Mr. Byers. We welcome you as President of the Board of Education for the year 2022. We're going to do a quick shuffle while we let the chair, which now falls on his plate, assume this spot.
During this transition, I would like to take the time to thank you, Dr. Calderon, for the constant presence, the diligent feedback, and the good leadership that you offered to the board this year. Thank you.
Here, I really, Valerie knows how much I respect and appreciate her leadership.
Nice view over here, Mark. It's a great view.
7 years in that chair. It's tough to give up. I kind of understand why you want it out of the middle. We'll continue on with nominations for vice president.
I'd like to nominate Kara Newbern for Vice President of the Board of Education for 2022.
Kara's been nominated for vice president. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, all in favor of Kara as vice president, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Congratulations, Kara.
Thank you, Kara.
And we'll now accept nominations for treasurer. Are there nominations for the position of treasurer?
I would like to nominate Allison Slabowski for Treasurer of the Board of Education for 2022.
Allison's been nominated for treasurer. Are there any other nominations?
There's second. No, second.
I don't think we
I don't think it's necessary.
All those in favor of Allison as treasurer, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Congratulations, Allison, and thank you again for another term as treasurer. With that, we'll continue on with our organizational meeting by approving practices and procedures. This is something we do every year. There are a number of items we need to do, including the approval of current board policies and regulations, approving the Bank of Bennington as the depository for the school district, approving the Post-Gazette, Daily Record, and Omaha World Herald as newspapers of record, reviewing several policies, including the school-sponsored media policy, the adoption of our order of business, board member code of ethics, the dissemination of conflict of interest statements, the appointment of superintendent as representative to the ESU Advisory Council, and the designation of the superintendent as the authorized representative for Bennington Public Schools for all state and federal programs. All of those can be approved together by consent with the appropriate motion.
Mark, do we need a separate vote for the secretary?
I think we do, but I don't think it's in the, is it in the practices?
In A, the last one in A.
Oh, the last one in A. Sorry, thank you. I'll come back to that. Thank you. We do need a secretary, so I hope somebody's writing this down, even though we don't. Have one. Is there a motion to approve the practices and procedures for the 2022 year?
I move to approve the 2022 school board practices and procedures as listed.
Thank you, Valerie. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Allison. Is there any discussion? Jody, please call the roll.
Tim?
Yes.
Yes.
Kara? Yes. Heather?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Allison? Yes.
Motion carries. Now, as was pointed out, we should properly have a secretary. I would entertain a motion to appoint one.
I move to appoint Jody as Secretary of the Board of Education and of Benton Public Schools for 2022.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second. Heather?
Thank you, Heather. Is there any discussion? Jody, please call the roll.
Tim?
Yes.
Yes.
Kara? Yes. Heather? Yes. Valerie?
Yes.
Allison? Yes.
And just to clarify, Board President, that's for the slate of officers altogether, that motion.
Strictly speaking, that was for the board secretary.
Okay? Thank you.
Do we need a motion to approve the whole slate since they were approved individually?
I don't believe so. Just wanted to clarify.
With that, I believe we move to the appointment of committee members. By policy, the president has discretion to name committee members. I am not inclined to change how those committees are constituted. So building and finance would continue to be Tim and Allison and Mark. The curriculum and American Civics Committee would continue to be Heather, Valerie, and Kara. And our policy committee just would have a change in that the officers of the board have tended to serve as the policy committee. So that would be Kara, Allison, and me for next year. So with that, we'll move to the approval of the consent agenda, which includes the approval of the agenda minutes from the meeting of December 13th and January bills. Who had bills this evening?
Valerie and I have those.
Anything noteworthy?
Yes, there were a couple items of note that were above the usual and ordinary. Just wanted to mention that we did make our first payment on the track resurfacing, which we discussed at our last month's meeting. And there were also some improvements to the softball field. The scoreboard was paid for, and some maintenance with the softball field and the Lucy Dale coach as well. So those were a couple items. And then lastly, I was pleased to know that we're starting to purchase textbooks for next year in anticipation of costs going up. So trying to do some planning around those purchases as well.
Very good.
And nothing to add, Valerie? Okay.
With that, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Jody, please call the roll.
Allison? Yes. Tim?
Yes.
Mark? Yes. Kara? Yes. Heather?
Yes.
Valerie? Yes.
Motion carries. And now we start into administrator reports. So as is customary, we'll start with elementary. And as a reminder to our studio audience and those on camera, if you could.
Say my name.
Yes, please. For the record.
Test. All right, Chad Boyce, principal at Anchor Point Elementary. Good evening and congratulations to our three officers on the board and to our constant, our secretary. Julie. Numbers are updated there. We continue to see some enrollment come in as we cross into the second semester. We do have students, I know at least at Anchor Point, that are starting next week that are not included in this number at this time, but numbers are staying pretty constant across the board. December was a busy month. We did have our spelling bee. We had assemblies. We had coat and toy drive. We had food drives. And we just wanted to highlight some of our excellent spellers that came out of each of the buildings, and wish our spellers will be traveling to Rhino Talbot on January 29th. Best of luck as they represent Bennington. So we also want to say thank you all for the delicious breakfast, welcoming all of our staff back. So it was good to see some of you back there slinging sausage. So thank you for that. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. Next, we have our middle school report.
All right, I'm Sean Hoppus, middle school principal. Just to highlight a couple things. The first one, we did a student connection survey for the first time, December 16th. And after the results came in, we had 80% of our kids that marked that they had at least one adult in the building they could go to if they needed something, or who they felt like they had a connection to. We met with teachers, we showed them who marked them. And so I think it was part exciting for the teachers to see, okay, these are the kids that feel that I am their connection to school. And so I think to kind of foster that and continue to grow it, but also to look at that 20% that felt like they didn't have a connection. So we met as teams and we all kind of broke up kids to try to go a little deeper with, to try to make sure that they feel like they have a connection at school, which is so important. We will do this survey again in March to see if that needle moves a little bit. So I think our staff enjoyed seeing it, and hopefully we can continue to help kids feel connected at school. We also had our spelling bee. We had our two, Dylan Rapp was our winner for that. And then we have our achievement celebration from Hexter 3. We had over, I think, 645 kids qualify. So kids had A, B's, and C's to qualify for that. So those were the highlights for us. Any questions?
Thank you, Sean. Next, we go to our high school report.
I'm Matt Blumenkamp, I'm the high school principal. If you could scroll to the next page, Dr. Hunt. There we go. Last paragraph there. DLR group was at the high school here this last week on Thursday and Friday. Spent time interviewing teachers in each department on Thursday all day, and then spent time with two different students shadowing classrooms on Friday. They're going to come back. Vanessa Schutte and Jason Limbach are going to come back on Thursday of next week, spend some time in our art department, in our chemistry labs, family consumer science, skill and technical sciences, our journalism lab, and some business classrooms, and visiting with those teachers as well, just due to the uniqueness of how those classrooms are built and the courses that are housed in those classrooms. So they will be back next week, and that will be prior to our visits to Overland Park, Kansas, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and the two schools in Omaha at OPS and at Elkhorn North. So DLR in the building, and have spent some time gathering some data with staff and with students so far. More to come on that. Questions about the start to high school programming for potentially school number 2? Or anything else on the board report?
Sounds like not tonight, but I'm sure there will be questions.
I'll do my best to prepare for those.
Next, student services.
I'm Whitney Fagan, Director of Student Services. So I wanted to share with you guys, usually around this time of year, I do our scores for special education students as a subgroup when it comes to state testing. It is kind of hard to compare scores throughout the years because NSCAS has changed and we had a pandemic year in there. So we are happy with a lot of the scores we are seeing in comparison with the state average, which is 20% proficient for a student with a disability in ELA and 19% in math. Of course, we would love 100% proficient, but they do have a disability, so there is going to be some of those struggling areas. And a highlight of this is Bennington Elementary, we're 50% proficient in ELA and 53% in math, and I just think that's a congratulations because all those students have some kind of area that they are just have a skill deficit in, and they're still achieving quite well there. I also have middle school comparisons, and then as well the ACT and the EL population for K-8. in their proficient levels. So we are above the state average, which we always hope for. But we're above it quite significantly in the majority of grades and majority of subgroups. Do you have any questions? Okay.
Thank you, Wendy. And curriculum.
Good evening, Dee Hoagie, Assistant Superintendent. I'm going to highlight test scores for you as well tonight. We shared this with the staff for our winter math assessments, but also this winter, we had students in grades 3, 4, and 5 participate in the new state growth test. So the state testing is going from a single day event to a through-year test, which means kids will do the test in the fall and the winter and the spring and get a cumulative score to show their growth during the year. So we're excited about that concept, and it will replace the MAP growth that we use at those test times. So our hope is it reduces the amount of testing for kids who are participating in the state test instead of having to do both MAP and the state test. So what we found overall, I have 4 years of data for you here of fall and winter MAP scores. So the first 4 bars was pre-COVID. The next 4 bars is where we're at catching up after COVID. So we are not back to the level we were prior to having dismissed school in March, but we are closing that gap. So you'll see I've got a dark box around 3 sets of scores. These are math scores. The MAP scores go from 100 to 300 points on their scale. You'll see that we are getting closer to prior winter scores, but those in the black box were actually on the new state test. So our students performed where we expected them to and did a very good job this winter. Those same students will take the spring state test, and it will accumulate their knowledge that they had from winter to spring as well. So we're excited to see how that works out from that. Overall, we're seeing growth with our students, and we're beginning to close that gap since we have dismissed from COVID. You'll see the same in the reading scores that follow. Overall, we're beginning to close that gap. We are seeing growth from fall to winter as well. It's a challenge in Bennington Public Schools because we are a high-achieving district. We have families who value education, who support their students very well in education. So our kids score well when they come to us in the fall. We have high scores to start with. Our goal is not only to keep our kids achieving at a high level, but also to see them grow at a high level as well. So that's always in our back pocket is something we're working on, is not only high achievers, but high in growth as well. And that's something that we point out to our staff and we continue to work with is in our groups in the classroom, so.
Dr. Hoagie, could you point out for most are used to a 0 to 100 scale, and yet they're 186 to 210s. Can you help the audience a little bit in that regard?
The MAP scale scores run from 100 to 300 is their scale as well. All of these scores represent the average for our grade level. In the fall, our kindergartners scored 144.6 on the SAIL score. That happens to be about the 90th percentile across the nation of kids taking this test. So Bennington students are well above the national average in these tests. So when we're looking at how we compare achievement-wise, we are very near the top in our state. And that goes along with our state testing as well. We find ourselves achieving very high as well. So questions that I can answer for you about test scores. Overall, we're happy with the progress our students are making. We still want to see us close that gap to pre-COVID as well.
I think we round out admin reports with highlights from the superintendent notes.
Dr. Blumenkamp covered quite a bit of number one. And one of the things that was mentioned, I hope, was a committee. And this involves board members, it involves staff, administrators, and patrons of the committee. And so Dr. Tyndall and Dr. Blumenkamp have identified some people that are going to make contact, those people in the next few days, to see if they're available for these tours and committee meetings afterwards. But you as board members, if you have anybody that you think would be interested in this, you think would bring benefit to this, please let us know, and we'll certainly reach out to them as well and see if they want to be a part of this or have the availability to be a part of this committee as well. Oftentimes you think that school closes down after May. It's not the case. There are quite a few things that are going on. You can see some of the schools that will be utilized this summer. We're also looking at 250 to 275 students that will be eligible for summer school in the elementary, whether that be the quartile they win that at the standards that they still need progress in, or the reading standards that the IRIPs, if you hear teachers talk about that. So we're looking at possibly 2 schools to accommodate that, because it is a much lower ratio. It's usually somewhere around 10 to 1, 10 students to 1 teacher, and that utilizes more classrooms. And the last thing is, we're interviewing much earlier. It seems earlier and earlier every year. Normally we have anywhere from 2 to 4 that we would recommend to the board for hire. Tonight we have, I think, over 12. And we'll continue to move in that on that timeline as well. Also, we have 2 administrators that we'll be looking to hire. Screening interviews for middle school start next week, the elementary the week after. And then shortly behind that would be the board staff panel. So if you're interested in sitting on that board administrative panel again, please let us know. We'll get some dates out so that you can put that on your calendar as well.
Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Huff? Okay, on the committee reports. Did the curriculum committee meet since the last board meeting?
Has not.
Okay. Building and Finance Committee has met a couple of times to discuss the construction management at risk process, which would be a different approach to managing building construction than our traditional design bid build. We have a policy in front of the board tonight that will kind of talk more about that process then. But that's really the work the committee's been doing. So did either of you have anything to add? With that, on to our construction report.
Mr. Berg is here this evening. Despite some extremely cold weather, progress is being made.
Yes, that is true. So going through the schools as we go, middle school number 2 is progressing very well. They are enclosed in the academic wing and have started some interior finishes such as painting and some tile work. They're continuing to finish up with decking and roofing on over the gym area. Proceeding very well, on track to be on to meet the scheduled contract date, and they're going to be pouring the last of their parking lot paving this week. Elementary number 5, the brick is complete around the entire building. They are trying to get more enclosed. Mechanical, electrical continue to work for the rough ends and above ceiling and the walls, and they're already getting their inspections for the walls so they can start closing those up here. The high school stadium is moving forward very well, installing new casework. We kind of moved around into expanding onto the new restrooms up into the stadium and have poured a lot of the paving and the plaza area, I would say. So moving forward with that, and the road work continues. That's a little more difficult with the weather that we've been having, but it's graded out. They have poured a large section on both ends of 171st Street, hoping to finish up with the roundabout here and we're on schedule as well.
Thank you, Mr. Berg. Any questions? Hopefully you'll warm up enough at some point to take your gloves off. I believe we have a transportation report next from Mr. Edens.
So I'm Jeremy Edens, Coordinator of Facilities and Transportation for the school district.
Sorry. Down nice.
So a little bit of statistics so far this year. We have 841 students that are transported on a daily basis. That's an increase of 171 riders compared to last year. We have 20 regular routes. 8 of those are traditional, which is K through 12 on one bus. 3 of those are special, meaning the drivers doing an elementary run and coming back and doing a secondary run, which is high school and middle school. That's an increase of 3 routes year over year. We have 4 special education routes. That's an increase of 1 year over year. And so far this year, first semester, we've done 288 activity trips for a total of 19,959 miles.
Don?
So this is what our year over year growth looks like. So back in 2019, we were seeing about 100 students every year, pretty easy to forecast. And then 2020, 2021, with the pandemic, we actually saw a decrease. We picked right back up where we were at 841 students for this year. So bus drivers and capacity. So capacity, 5 buses right now are at capacity. I can't register any more students on those buses. Capacity is based off of 3 students per seat. 3 split routes is really helping curb the demand, but even those routes are averaging 80% capacity right now. Drivers, CDL, regular route drivers, so big buses. Currently, we have 8 drivers on staff. 3 routes right now are being covered non-traditionally, so we have Mr. Hinkle, who's a certificated staff member that's helping us out, myself, and Mr. Rick Thomas, who's my assistant, that's also helping out daily. We also have been able to use our special education drivers that have CDLs to help fill in some of those gaps, and then we backfill with admin and other teachers and staff members to help with the special education routes and bands. We do have paraprofessionals and kitchen staff also assisting with special education routes. That's been something new this year that's really, really helping us out. So our fleet, the need to continue purchasing additional buses to the fleet is necessary due to the growth of the district. Bids are being gathered right now and look to get those approved next month, looking for 2 additional 84 passenger buses. The district's in need of adding to our van inventory as well, recommended that we add 2 new vans to the fleet for next school year. So growing neighborhoods and capacity on buses. So this is Stratford Park. The first 4 years I was here, Stratford Park was able to be done in 1 bus, so anywhere from 50 to 70 kids. This year, right now, we have 102 students in Stratford Park, so it doesn't fit in a 78 passenger van, so this is one of our split neighborhoods. The elementary route right now has got about 60 kids on it. The middle school and high school route's got about 60 kids on it because they do the bottom portion south of state on Majestic Point as well. So driver retention and some new training standards coming down from the Federal Motor Coach Safety Administration. So far for turnover, we had 3 drivers hired over the summer, only 1 was retained. 1 long-term employee resigned to go to another district, and then we're running into issues with the growing wages for CDL drivers around the area. So retention over the next year will be a concern as wages for surrounding districts and CDLs continue to grow. We are monitoring that closely, keeping an eye on the wage and benefits that are being offered right now. So map 21 is a new regulation. It's called Moving Ahead for Progress 2021. The FMCSA has decided that school bus training and all CDL training wasn't adequate enough. So they put together legislation that goes into effect on February 7th. New regulation has 2 parts: entry-level driver training, and every location has to be registered in the trainer-provided registry. FMCSA is looking to raise the standard across the United States to improve the quality of training So each location has to be registered, and then we have to fill out all the paperwork that's associated with that. A brand new driver that's never held a CDL before would have to go to one of the TPRs, so a trainer provided registry trainer. So with that comes, I think, like 63 subjects that have to be taught with 30 assessments, and then 30 hours of behind the wheel training as well. So looking ahead, given the challenges in staffing and the new federal requirements, Bennington Public Schools should give careful consideration to contracting services either part or fully for next school year. Currently have 6 driver positions open, and this will get me off the road, my assistant off the road, and our certificated staff member off the road. Another alternative Bennington Public Schools could consider would be staggering start and dismissal times by 45 to 60 minutes. This would make each route a split route and nearly double our capacity each driver would be able to do daily. So I did take a look at fees right now. Bennington is $175 per semester per student, so $350 per semester, or $700 per year maximum per family. Elkhorn right now, $89.30 per month per child, $84.30 for your second, $79.30 for your third, and then your fourth child is free. Family of 3 students in Elkhorn is paying about $2,500 a year, compared to Bennington, $700 per year. So I did do a little exploring on the cost of contracting. Elkhorn Public Schools was able to tell me they pay chief school buses about $300 per route. Compared to us, we pay $18.50 an hour for 2 hours, $37. That's not including, maintenance, fuel, vehicle purchases, and all the other stuff that goes along with that. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edens. With the start of the year comes the convening of the legislature. There was some content in the lobbyist report. And Julie's with us this evening. Welcome.
Thank you.
Oh, perfect, sure.
Thank you so much. I'm Julia Plucker, the district's retained lobbyist. I enjoy the opportunity to be here. I could go on and on, about politics and all the fun stuff that we're experiencing and going to experience this legislative session, but I'll keep it short and ask questions and keep me on. The legislative session started last Wednesday. We are on day 4, and of course, it's a 60-day session, which means they don't do the entire budget, but you're going to hear in a couple minutes that the session is all about money, regardless of the fact that this isn't a budget year. So 60 days will end April 20th. The senators have 10 days for bill introductions, and that's the most exciting time of the session. No, I'm kidding, but that's when we really find out what brilliant 800 or so ideas are going to be introduced by the senators. So we couple those along with all the carryover bills that were not indefinitely postponed last year, and you have both lists in your board packets, and that's sort of our agenda as we move forward for the next 60 days. So we're day 4 into the 10-day bill introductions. I think your bills of interest list is up to 6 or 7 pages already. You typically have a lot of bills that we monitor. Some we support, some we oppose. And again, that's what kind of sets the tone for how the year will go. Public hearings, every bill in Nebraska, of course, gets a public hearing, which is different than the rest of the country. Our public hearings start on January 18th, so next week, and they'll go until March 3rd. Priority designations are due on February 22nd. Priority designations are important. In Nebraska, every senator gets 1, every committee gets 2, and because there's only 60 days, pretty much anything that's not prioritized, you're not going to have time to get to. So this year, we're seeing a rash of senators reprioritizing bills that were carryover bills from last year. Either they were priority bills last year and they didn't make it, or they were just regular bills, and this year they decided to prioritize them. So that creates an interesting schedule as we are starting full day debate, which started today and will continue until the hearings next week, and then they'll do debate in the morning on the floor and then public hearings in the afternoon. So the speaker has announced that he'll do 2022 priorities first is number one, but they have to get through committee hearings, so there's none available yet. 2021 priority bills that are either prioritized still from last year and we didn't get to them, or they're reprioritized, and then 2021 carryover bills that were on the regular worksheet. One bill of interest to education that has been reprioritized is Senator Linehan's Opportunity Scholarships bill. And that will be, because they got through one controversial bill today, it will be up this week sometime. So that bill, look for that to be, I forgot the number of that, Terry. Do you know it off the top of your head?
14? No, that's.
No, it's, well, I can find it in a second.
We'll go back to the other ones.
But that will be heard this year. Quickly, COVID protocols, we've had very major disruptions, obviously in the last 2 years, and the number of ways of doing business, especially between lobbyists and senators, have changed, but those all seem to be back to normal this year, for better or worse, with the new variant and the higher numbers. Our note system has been reinstituted, where we can send notes into senators and they can come out the doors, and that Rotunda is open, which it has not been in the last couple of years. Public hearings will also be more back to normal. It's obviously up to the chair how he or she wants to do those protocols. And we had instituted written testimony in lieu of live testimony. That's going away, but they have kept some of the public input things that you can do online, and of course you can submit your letters online. So those are kind of the only differences we're seeing now. Terry asked me to do kind of a session preview. What are the big issues? What is the governor going to say? I think I don't word for word know the speech that's going to be done on Thursday, but I feel like I've got a really good grasp of what he's going to talk about. The entire session, besides all the policy stuff, besides the great 800 ideas that are going to be introduced, is all about money. We have more money than we've ever had since I've been lobbying for a lot of years. We have $313 million just from our normal revenues to spend, which is very unusual. Usually we're looking at deficits or not enough money. That's in addition to the $475 million that's just going to go into the rainy day fund. And then we have $1 billion worth of ARPA funds coming to the state. How are we going to spend those? So there have been already interim hearings. Every group and institution, from libraries to MUD to the Chamber of Commerce, have come down and said, here's how we want you to spend this money. So the governor has a package of his recommendations for how the money should be spent, and then senators have their ideas in the way of an appropriations bill or individual bills on how that money should be spent. So the topic, the question being most asked is what is in the governor's budget, because that's the most likely place where if you have your funding in there, it's probably going to pass. Those will be unveiled on Thursday, we believe, after his State of the State address in the morning. His priorities also include, workforce development, corporate tax reduction, property tax reduction. Blueprint Nebraska is a new report that is out in the interim that he's lobbying very hard for. New prison, rural broadband, and he said a spate of pro-life legislation might get passed in his last term. He did, of course, say he'd like to limit school spending to 3% growth allowable per year. So he is definitely looking at tax cuts, school refinancing, and putting most of the money in that direction. other senators, I think Luann Linehan would, who's chair of the Revenue Committee, would echo a lot of those priorities. The Columbus plan is a financing plan that was unveiled in the interim. I think we'll hear a lot about that in the Education Committee. But those are probably the main topics that we're going to hear. Also keep in mind, this is a term limited year, so the governor will be gone. This is his last session, as well as 12 term limited senators, which is about 25% of the body. And a number of senators who are running for higher office next year. So it's going to be a fun, fast, furious year. Any questions from anyone?
Julia, just clarifying on the ARPA funds, that's above a $300+ million extra, that's.
Yes, yep, that's in addition to those just state receipt funds that we have. It's really remarkable. You know, they have an opportunity to do a lot of good, but there's going to be a lot of fighting on how that money is spent. And you have new senators. You have probably talked about that. Maybe you want to.
Lots of them.
Lots of them. And Dr. Hawk and I have talked about getting in front of some of those senators that, you know, weren't historically representing Bennington and presenting the facts about the school district. I think that would be very helpful for those senators.
We'll attempt to do so in the next couple of weeks, early in the session.
Very good.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Next is our spotlight report, which is on our multicultural education philosophy statement.
We are giving you your final report for this year on our multicultural education. You'll see nothing new in the first top portion of the document that we haven't presented already. As we get into the belief statements, you will see that there are bullets, and then the information below that is what you would see in classrooms across our district. So on page 2 that Dr. Hawk has up for us to look at, student personal skill for inclusive school. That is a special training that our high school students are all going through this year on February 11th. What it covers is diversity, stereotyping, microaggressions, and how that impacts other students. It also will introduce to students how to engage with differences and examine their personal assumptions, search for similarities, and how to address people when they feel that there has been a microaggression toward them or one of their friends. So what you're seeing in these bulleted areas are actual activities we either have planned or that are already occurring in our classrooms across the district. So we feel very proud that our staff has implemented many of the priorities that our committee of 80 that we started with last year put before us as areas that they really wanted to see benefit our students. So this report we bring to you in to just tell you and advise you of what's happening in our schools and across our classrooms. So any information I can expand on or share with you about the work that we've done to bring you this final report.
Dr. Hoey, what's the requirement with the Nebraska Department of Education? Is this report been submitted?
It is submitted to the board, documented that we have made the report to you annually, and that is part of our Rule 10 requirements, that we report these activities to you, and that our work is aligned to our policy work that's done within the district. So. Thank you.
Okay,
Yes.
you might have said this before. Where is it that the staff training occurs with these new practices and encouraging classroom practices and such?
Absolutely. We have a couple of different places that we're doing training with staff. First, we have purchased new training materials through Safe Schools, which is now retitled itself to Vector Training. And they have it called Diversity EDU. It is a 3-course progression for our staff that talks about our own personal opinions and feelings and biases that we carry just because of who we are and our personal experiences in life, and how to become more familiar and more open with welcoming the students who are before us and learning about them as well. So it is a 3-course progression that all of our teachers completed during the fall. The second portion that is available to us is through that Safe Schools programming as well, and talks about diversity, it talks about bullying and addressing that, talks about how staff and student relations should work, how to interact with students and parents at different levels with different experiences. So those are the 2 main areas. We have a third area of training that we do when we have a group of teachers going through a curriculum adoption, and they are trained to look for bias in materials. There are 7 types of bias that we train teachers in as they examine materials, so that we make sure that we are doing our best to adopt materials that are representative of students that we have. And when we have something that's missing in those materials, we make a plan when we write our curriculum that would address those missing elements.
Is the Safe Schools training, is it a la carte or is it required for certain things? Like, you must go through the bullying one, you must go through the diversity one?
That we mandate for our district what courses every teacher takes each year. The courses are more than we could ask a teacher to do for the year. So some we go through about a 3-year cycle to bring them up again and refresh. The Diversity EDU was new to us this year, and so every teacher completed that cycle of 3 courses this fall.
Thank you.
There's a list of Safe Schools trainings that's in the superintendent's report that does highlight some of the things that Dr. Hogan just talked about.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, and I also want to thank the staff, the community members, the students who invested their time in generating thoughtful ideas to generate this report. It was a while in coming, but I appreciate the thoughtfulness that went into it. So thank you to all involved. Last report is strategic planning, goal number 4.
And with apologies to Dr. Eden, I think the batteries are now fresh and we'll try this again.
Okay, we are strategic goal 4. I'm Allison Evangelisti, principal at Pine Creek.
Whitney Fagan, Director of Student Services.
Shannon Tyndall, Assistant Director of Curriculum and Instruction and Assessment.
Renee Rucker, Assistant Principal at the middle school.
And we're pleased to share with you some of our initiatives and ongoing work. As you may have heard, we rewrote our multicultural education statement. So our goal worked together with our committee as well as board stakeholder groups, students, district, and community stakeholder groups to collaborate, to edit, to add, and then to really reaffirm our commitment to multicultural education. In addition, we worked to define the words diversity, inclusion, and equity. We worked to put some real action steps underneath each of those terms and to commit to some guiding principles by the staff.
All right, the SEDL cohort, or the Social Emotional Behavioral Learning Cohort, was created to support not only the needs of our students, but our staff members as well. It is comprised of district administration and staff, as well as building teams from our elementary schools and the middle school. Each building team, there's an administrator, guidance counselor, classroom teacher representatives, and special education teachers, and special or exploratory teachers as well. During our first semester, the cohort met 4 times with representatives from Nebraska and TSS. We developed action plans that focused on promoting adult self-care and educator well-being in our buildings. Both Nebraska MTSS as well as our cohort recognize the importance of having teachers that are in a good mental, social, emotional place, so they can model that for our students and support them as needed. This semester, our individual building teams will continue the work and focus on developing student SEBL in their classrooms. We were lucky enough to work with Dr. Dominique Smith during our PD day, and we will continue to look at virtual team coaching with him throughout the semester and through the summer.
Okay, I'm going to talk about MTSS and our high school cohort. So the SEBL cohorts were directed towards our K-8 because the ESU started a cohort last year and we're getting in on the second year right now for MTSS at the secondary level. So multi-tier systems of support, which includes academic, behavior, social, emotional, all of that areas it covers. So we aren't solely focusing on SEBL with the high school. We're trying to look at everything kind of all encompassing. Dr. Judy Elliott is a big guru in MTSS and high school education, and so she is training all of us. We have gone through 2 trainings so far. We have another one in February and then one in June. This last 2, we kind of really started at what are the systems in our high school, and then we started looking at student F rates, and I know last year that was a concern, was the student S along with attendance. So we're looking at those areas in the subgroups, trying to break that data down a little bit more. Mr. Lamberty and a couple of the teachers have created a survey that's going to go out to all of the families, and it really talks to the families about what supports we have in place to help students academically, whether it's academic coaching, Saturday school, different things like that, and what's working and what we can do to better improve and support our students. This team also met with Dr. Smith, so then we could really look at, okay, we know that SEL has a lot to do with our academics and how can we combine that, and he will also offer coaching to them as we move forward with services from him. This is a multi-year cohort, so we're just halfway through year 1, but hopefully it goes through 3 years.
Mrs. Fagan, you probably said this, so forgive me if I missed. Can you please remind the board what MTSS stands for?
Yes, multi-systems, multi-tier systems of support.
Okay, and the final initiative that we're going to cover tonight that has been spearheaded by our strategic goal number 4 is the social emotional curriculum adoption. This has been a process, and just wanted to update you where we're at in the process. We completed curriculum review and evaluations. We picked our top 5 vendors and had those vendors come either with COVID, we either had them present virtually or they came and presented in person to us. And the committee is looking to make recommendations. We have a meeting scheduled with this committee in February, and we'll kind of look at the pros and cons. Our main goal of this is common language, and we also want consistency. And what we picked is the 6 competencies that you find in Castle, which is a leading researcher in SEL. And you can see them up on the board, the 6 social emotional learning competencies that they recommend. And so what we hope is that sometime in March or April at the board, we can present to the board a recommendation for adoption of a K-12 curriculum. And then our final step in this process will be the professional learning that will take place. Implementation, we'll make an implementation plan, and then we will train our staff on how to deliver the lessons in the curriculum. That is the highlights, our 4 slides of highlights and the initiatives that we focused on so far this year. Is there any questions for us?
Looks like no questions and a solid team presentation. Thank you. With that, we'll proceed to unfinished business. And our first item in unfinished business is a construction change order for middle school. Dr. Hawk, some background on that item?
Construction, I'm going to defer to Mr. Berg on this, the water looping at the middle school.
There was, how do I put this? So we have mechanical piping and plumbing that leaves the academic wing and works its way over to the main mechanical room. There was a large precast sill that was in the way. If we would go under it, it would have been below the ceiling. So we had to just reroute around it. So unfortunately, we had to redesign a little bit there on the fly with the guys out in the field. So it was a little bit of extra piping. They didn't have it installed at the time, but we just had to go around it. So, and actually core drill through a couple of different levels.
In other words, a change order.
Yeah.
And so we have one before you.
I move to approve item CCR number 22 for mechanical piping reroute and C124 for $14,651.26 for middle school number 2.
Thank you, Valerie. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Allison. Any further discussion on this matter?
Can I just ask, how long was it, or like a long ways?
To reroute?
Yeah.
Not terribly, but it was a lot of large pipes. So there was 2 8-inch pipes, 4 4-inch pipes, and then a multitude of like 3/4 inch, which we were able to actually kind of go.
Hoping to get, because I'm thinking if it's like a 3/4 inch pipe that we ran, that's 15 grand.
No. Unfortunately, yes, and I kind of beat them down on this a little bit because we actually they wanted to go a different way, and we kind of just rerouted.
Thank you.
There are no other questions. Please call the roll, Julie.
Tim?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Kara?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
And motion carries. Next, in unfinished business, we have our return to work plan.
I'm sorry, you get to see me a lot today. Because lucky for me, I know all about our COVID return to learning protocols for January that started just last week. And so I'm going to update you guys on some of the changes. There we go. So our goal has not changed. We want to keep students in school safely. Yeah, that hasn't changed, guys. We're still working towards that. Tonight's plan we're going to review, as we always do. These are the areas that have been updated. And we will get to this. So this is kind of the big story of COVID in Bennington Public Schools and the numbers that people want to know about the most. We do update them almost daily on our district website, but this is comparing first semester of this year to first semester last year when COVID was kind of new to us. As you can see, we did skyrocket kind of in numbers in September, October compared to last year. November, we had 1 less case this year, and in December, we kind of drastically dropped. I will say over the last week, we've had quite a few cases that have come in that affected Christmas or winter break, but it didn't affect our students because nobody was in school at that time, so those numbers are not counted here. But we did see a drop. Now, with Omicron, we are starting to see kind of a big increase, I think, in cases in our middle school, high school this last week. However, the CDC director did just say yesterday that they expect it to come or to leave us as fast as it's came. So let's keep our fingers crossed on that. Protocol updates. So we're staying in green. We're continuing to recommend masks strongly to individuals, especially those that are not vaccinated at this time. Fully vaccinated did change. It used to be just the 2 shots if you have an mRNA vaccine, or it was just 1 shot with the J&J vaccine, and now they do require the booster to be considered fully vaccinated. We are happy that all school-age individuals and staff have now had the opportunity to be fully vaccinated, and the school did support that with 2 clinics that we will talk about in a minute. Contact tracing, these updates did go out to families last Friday and were updated on our website as well. The big change from CDC and from the Douglas County Health Department is 14 days to 10 days. So they were saying that you could show symptoms up to 14 days. Now they're saying 10 days. So a lot of our masking protocols will go down to 10 days. When we have a case in the elementary classroom, we are still sticking with requiring masks for that 10 days right now because of that Omicron and trying to get a good idea of where it goes. And so hopefully we can adjust things as we move forward. Secondary school, we are changing from contact tracing to where we send an email every time there's a case because we weren't requiring anything at the secondary level. It's really difficult for us to mandate a mask if you were exposed to COVID-19 when you have 8 different classes throughout the day and keeping track of that. So we're now sending weekly emails, which a couple of other districts have started as well, that just give you the list of how many kids in the building and staff in the building have tested positive and what grade levels. We're going to see how that goes for a couple weeks, and then we'll kind of reconvene at that time. So we are no longer closing classrooms as our goal. If we do get quite an outburst of cases, we will continue to monitor those with the health department and listen to them if we do have an outbreak. But because it went from 10 days to 5 days, we do think that it will be a lot harder to shut down classes. We haven't had multiple cases in a classroom within 5 days yet. So we're being optimistic that we can keep our classrooms open and safe. For in-home, it did change a bit. You can come to school still if there's somebody in your house that has COVID-19, but you're recommended a mask through day 10. If you're unvaccinated, you used to stay home for 10 days and have a test to come back. That has gone down to 5 days at your home, and you no longer have to have a test to come back, and that is per the guidance from DCHD and the CDC. So positive diagnosis, this also changed quite a bit as well. So you used to be out for 10 days, now you're out for 5 days, and then you can come back as long as you wear a mask for those remaining 5 days. Symptoms, we are still sending kids home and staff home for symptom checks, and we're kind of keeping an eye on that as the different variants are seeming to change on what the symptoms are. So we're not hearing as much about the loss of taste or smell with the new strain of COVID. So we'll kind of keep an eye on this and continue to meet with the health department to see if that will change. This did also change. Kids could be out up to 10 days if they went home with symptoms. Now the maximum is 5 days, but they would have to be out as long as they're fever-free for 24 hours prior. Additional things we're doing this semester. At the elementary last semester, we did not have any clubs. As some families that have elementary students will see, we have surveys going out, and we're hoping to have a scaffolding approach to return some clubs to our buildings. Secondary, or we had clubs as kids were intermixed throughout the day as it was. And secondary had the opportunity to be vaccinated much sooner than our elementaries. Homeroom for elementary, we're gonna go back to having those cross-grade mixing homerooms, that family time where it could be kids K-5. Once those groups are assigned though, they will stay static, so we can keep an eye on that. Lunchroom, same thing that we've been doing. If they're not 3 feet or more apart, we'll have the seating chart or assigned tables, and then transportation continue with our seating charts. So we did have those 2 vaccine clinics, and we were really happy to see we gave out 533 vaccinations, and not we, the health department. We really just showed them a location that they could use it, but our community did take advantage of that, so we were very excited to see that. This did not change, these are just the continued protocols that we're recommending. This part I'll let Dr. Hoagie hit on, but you'll see that those attendance numbers are kind of scary with how many people we've had 10% out or more, but we're really hoping with those new protocols going from 10 days to 5 days that will change for second semester.
Thanks, Whitney. Whitney's absolutely correct. We are really hopeful that this surge that we've seen in the number of students who are considered excessively absent. To be excessively absent right now, you need to be absent 8 days or more during our school year. It's 10% of our enrolled days. So if somebody had a positive case in their household, they were out for 10 days. That was just required of us during that quarantine period. It's also, I've been reporting each month on this, the number of students we've had out where parents are quarantining because of a family exposure, or whether the school is quarantining students because we've had to send them home with symptoms. And the majority of the time it was parents keeping kids home. And we appreciate parents making that choice to keep their kids home to stop spread for us. But that does boost the number of kids who are missing more than 10% of their days in school. It's a big concern for the administrators. They're trying to figure out ways to make sure kids are not losing learning at this time. So they are continuing to plan. We're focusing on the students that have been out to make sure that they're caught up, all the options that we can provide families to make sure that we get them caught up, and supports as that goes. So we have more than doubled our excessive absences. Our concern with this, that the state still doesn't have an answer for us, is that excessive absenteeism knocks us down on whether we're a great school or a good school. It does knock that off. That's one of those check boxes that does say you're a good school or you're not. Well, COVID has influenced attendance rates to a great deal. So if that fills you in on where we're looking at right now, yes.
Before we leave that, some perspective on, do you have any perspective on how other districts are doing on this?
We are looking very similar to most districts across the state.
And then, Matt, I was going to ask you, do you have more students in credit recovery, or are there?
For first semester, we did not have quite a few more students in credit recovery. We earned a few more credits than we did a semester ago, but the total number of students, I think that was in my board report, I can't remember, it was like 20 to 22 or something like that, as far as the number of students that were in after school credit recovery. Now, our Saturday school numbers are up significantly. We're bringing lots of students in. Mr. Lambry runs Saturday school every Saturday. We were at 2 hours on Saturday school. We've extended that to 4 hours on Saturday school. Some students come for an hour, some come for 2, some come for 4. And it used to be Saturday school was for kids that were in trouble. We're using more and more Saturday school for opportunities to make up work for students that have been gone or absent.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions that we can answer for you on any of the new protocols or concerns with excessive absenteeism? Thank you.
Thank you for the update. With that, we'll proceed to new business. And our first item of new business is the first reading for an additional policy regarding construction management risk. So if you would, Dr. Locke, could you give us some background on this?
Absolutely. Number one, you need a policy if the district is to move with a new process to build buildings. Construction management at risk, as you can read in that second paragraph, is different than the process you've been using in the past. Design is, prints are done by the architect, they're put out for hard bid, and then once the low bidder, the preferred low bidder is selected, you go out and build based off the design from the architect. Construction management at risk, still get a building, still designed by the district per se, but the architect and the construction management team work together at some point in time. So what we're doing right now is DLR is working through the process. You saw that earlier in superintendent notes where we're going to visit other schools. In parallel, you'll work with the legal firm, legal counsel, to develop a process whereby you select a construction manager. Once that construction manager, it goes out to bid, there are many different steps that go in that. Ralston just finished one recently. In fact, they're doing so this evening at their board meeting, where they put it out for request for proposal, had 6. They narrowed that down to 4 for interviews. That committee, which is specific in state statute, then narrowed that down to 2, which were brought before the board. Once that is selected, then there's negotiation for that construction manager. They're brought in parallel with the architect, and the construction manager sees the design of the building before it goes out, per se, for bid. Once that construction manager is selected, there is a qualified price that goes along with that. How does the construction manager make money? Typically, there's a contract written and a percentage of what that hard price would be. It's not tied to the low bidder on subcontractors. Subcontractors, some of those may go out for bid, some may be selected by the community or the Board of Education. And this is done in joint effort as we move forward. One of the reasons that people use this for larger projects is the fact that you have that price before you go before the community. So that construction management contract can be done before the vote, and that guaranteed price could be out there before you go to vote. Doesn't have to be, but could be. As you can see, 90% of the districts in the state of Nebraska at 15 to 20 million or projects bigger do you utilize something like this? The other side of this is we've been doing the design, bid, build, because in part, we've been looking at buildings that are similar to other buildings we have in the district. A lot of those change orders have been worked out when we go to another one. Fourth time, we've built an elementary. Second time, we've built a similar middle school. Sometimes those are built off of buildings in other districts. High school is different. It will be unique to Bennington. It may be a piece from a neighboring school district, a piece from another district in a different state, but it is unique to the community. Thus, having that construction manager alongside the architect helps ensure that you get the building you want. So this process has to involve a new policy. The policy is before you this evening. It is very specific in state statute. Thus, the policy is pretty much what state statute is. And those items are before you. This is the first reading. The second reading will be in February. Are there any questions that the Building and Finance Committee or any more information the Building and Finance Committee would like to add to that?
I can always find something to add, but we'll go with the questions first. Heather, did you have?
Yeah. So just some clarification. Is this state statute once you decide to accept the policy, or is state statute encouraging us to develop the policy?
It is a tool in which you can utilize. So first you have to have the policy in place if you want to do construction management at risk. You do not have to, but you have to have the policy in place.
And I'm also curious about this, and maybe this is a question for the committee at a later time. But I wonder about, as we enter this new phase of building, the engineer firm and the architect firm, and how come we have not put anything out to bid or looking at options with other firms. Nothing personal to the people in the room, but just acknowledging that we've been with these partners for a long time and just wondering as we turn the corner, there's food for thought there.
I think I keep going in and out on battery here. Thank you. I can speak to that a little bit. I think Dr. Hawk alluded to it. We've, DLR has been our architecture firm for as long as I can remember. And most of the buildings that this district have built have been kind of the same design, right? So from an architectural design standpoint, I think they've demonstrated their competence. From a cost estimation and constructability on large projects, we've had, I think, good reliability because the design has been similar and we kind of know what goes into those buildings. Places where we've had more variation in cost estimation and constructability have been on projects that have been more unique. And so I think one of the reasons it's good to consider construction management here is that it is a process that allows DLR to do what it is best at doing, which is design and architecture. And it brings somebody on the construction side in to consult on cost estimation and constructibility on something that's going to be a complex, multi-year kind of thing. And frankly, there's an interaction that needs to happen between the architect, that construction management firm, and the school district in terms of functionality of that building and how it matches curriculum, so that all parties are kind of making adjustments to get to the best product for the district at the best cost. So that's a long-winded answer to, I think rather than going out to RFP for new architecture firm and those kinds of things, I think this potentially creates a formula where we can get to the best outcome for the community at the best cost. So, and with that, I would also say this is a first reading. There's no action, and even when we approve the policy in February, doesn't necessarily mean that we're approving construction management for this process. So the board has some time to discuss, deliberate. We're not selecting a construction management firm until we approve the RFP for the construction manager. So I'll yield the floor to anybody else who likes it.
One other thing to add to that, Dr. Pierce, is that the district has gone out for RFP for engineering and construction design or architectural firms on 2 different occasions. One prior to the high school, first construction, and the other, I believe, before 2015, I believe. Each time RFPs, each time different architectural firms have come before us. And in both of those cases, DLR was selected to represent the district. So it has gone out before, it has been vetted by the Board of Education, and that has come back to DLR.
Certainly. Any other comments or?
Just one quick question, and it was on timeline. We are good, the committee's comfortable, and the administration is comfortable with the timeline on the 2 readings, so we can get this policy before the board again in February for a final review and potential adoption of the policy. We're good with timing after that in terms of inviting this potential partner and all of that, just confirming that.
That is correct.
And how does this pertain to cost savings? Can we see more cost savings with something like this?
Not necessarily. Construction management at risk, there is, the guaranteed price that goes along with that. There's still the possibility of change orders. Each sub has the possibility of contingency fund within their own contract with that construction manager. And so it's not necessarily a cost savings. We believe that the building itself will be designed and it will be something that the community has more faith in.
It's more about guaranteeing you're getting what you're wanting versus.
More the design of it and final completion than anything cost savings.
Yeah, I think I would add to that, the cost savings one could potentially see would be difficult to evaluate because it would happen in the design stage, right? So you don't know what it would have cost if you had designed it without the construction management firm. But again, by state statute, there are a couple of processes that school districts are allowed to use to ensure that taxpayers are getting value. Design, bid, build is one, construction management at risk is another. And I think there are other, it's kind of hard to measure the potential costs of some of the risks with a complex multi-year project as well. So you've got supply chain issues with materials, those kinds of things. So I think there are, from a timeline standpoint, and again, getting the project done with quality and on schedule, are risks that that can be managed with the construction management risk process. So, and again, I don't want to come off as that I'm necessarily married to that, but I think most of the high schools constructed in Nebraska have used this process. They're using it for a reason. And so I think we need to evaluate as a board, is that the best course of action for us, and not just proceed with the process we've relied on in the past for this project that's unique in some respects.
Just to remind me if you can, but our committee meeting, did Elkhorn North not do this? Is that correct? And that we just, or somebody told us that?
That's right.
Yeah, okay. So it's not something that has to be done. We don't know that yet. We're still looking at it.
That's correct. Elkhorn North did come in overbid. There was some value-added engineering that had to occur to bring that either at the budget or additional monies were utilized to make that happen.
Thanks, Rob. I just can't keep the red line on. Any more discussion on first reading of that policy? Thank you for the good questions. Next, we'll discuss and consider and take action on the Bennington Public Schools Foundation appointment. This is an appointment to the board of the foundation, thank you, Rob, that we do annually. And I would move to appoint, oh, no, sorry, these are appointments for the foundation, not the board appointments, is that correct?
Well, there
Or are they?
are. The first two are patrons of the district, and those are motions before you to add these two members to the district foundation board of directors.
I would entertain motions for those appointments.
I move to appoint Chris Reiner as a member of the Bennington Public Schools Foundation Board of Directors for a first four-year term that begins January 2022.
I will second that. Is there any discussion? Jody, please call the roll.
Allison?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Kara?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
And a motion for Amy Barish.
I move to appoint Amy Barish as a member of the Bennington Public Schools Foundation Board of Directors for her first four-year term beginning January 2022.
Thanks, Kara. I'll second that as well. Any other discussion?
Are they, if you don't mind, are they taking place of somebody right now, or are they adding two more to this?
Yeah, these would be replacements. And Regina, do you, who's coming off the board?
Actually, one's coming off, and then we're putting two on, so Cheryl Cornett actually did 2 terms on board, so just about every year or every couple of years, you'll have 1 or 2 people now going off the board, and it's part of the requirement that the Board of Education approves all of our individuals.
Thank you.
If no other questions, Jody, please call the roll.
Heather?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Kara?
Yes.
And a member of the Board of Education also serves as a liaison to the public schools, or the Bennington Public Schools Foundation. And I would like to move that Valerie be appointed that liaison to the Bennington Public Schools Foundation Board of Directors for a 1-year term, beginning in January.
Second.
Thank you, Heather. Any discussion? Jody, please call the roll.
Kara?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Valerie?
Abstain.
Allison?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes. And that motion carries. Next, we have a discussion, consideration, and action on bids for security infrastructure and phone at Stratford Elementary and Bennington South Middle School.
That is correct, as you can see on the board. Security includes a couple of different things. Number one, it includes the cameras, it includes the pads, as you can see. It also includes the access points, as you get into buildings. So this is a larger contract, what we've been accustomed to as prices continue to increase. But it encompasses quite a few things that go along with that. It does not include the cabling. That has already been approved by the Board of Education moving forward. And so this is one of the last things that will be added to the building this spring and summer as it nears final completion. Prime Communication is the bidder. Prime Communication has done quite a bit of work with the district. They're a valued member, and we really don't have any concerns moving forward with this contract or company.
Thank you, Dr. Hawk. There is a potential motion before the board.
You should also, the motion also includes phones. So the phone bid is there. It is the same phone system that we have in all the other buildings. Therefore, it is connectability that goes along with not only the 6 buildings that we have, but all 8 buildings will be tied together. Excuse me. So you do have a bid, again, Prime Communications, for both of these contracts.
I so moved to authorize the superintendent to enter into an agreement with the following vendors to provide security infrastructure and phone system for the new Stratford Elementary and Bennington South Middle School facilities as presented. Number 1 and 2, both to Prime Communications, the security equipment for $299,915.30, and the phone system to Prime Communications for $65,050.68.
Second?
Thank you, Tim, and a second by Valerie. Is there any further discussion on this matter? Jody, please call the roll.
Mark?
Yes?
Kara? Yes. Heather?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Now we have made our way to the ever popular
My
school
favorite
calendar
I'll tell you that.
discussion.
So 2023-24 calendar. It is very similar to the 22-23 calendar that was approved last February, with an exception. Easter in 2024 moves up into March. That, I believe, allows for a full week spring break. That spring break will look differently than the traditional spring break that Bennington has had in the past. Bennington is typically gone Thursday, Friday, and then the Monday after. If you were to take 2 days away from the winter break and place them into the spring, you could have a full week spring break. It does not coincide with the traditional, i.e. you would be back in school on Monday after Easter, but it does allow for that spring break. All other things considered are very similar. You're taking off January 15th for Martin Luther King Day, taking off President's Day. Graduation is the last Sunday before the last week. And you're starting August 11th for staff, August 16th for students, and the in-service days are very similar. As we typically do, we do not recommend that the board approve this calendar at this point in time. We will send out a survey to the staff. I'm sure they will have many opinions about the calendar. We will bring those thoughts to the board and we will bring a recommendation for calendar in 23-24 to the next meeting. Any questions?
That sounds great. I do have a couple of questions. So the winter break described there would be without shifting a couple of days to spring. Is that correct?
The winter break, it does take 2 days away, as I said, from what was prescribed the year before. By the way, the year we have not experienced yet, next school year. So when you look at it, you go down here, the last day of school would be the 21st. The first day back for students would be the 3rd.
Okay, so it already accounts for those 2 days being moved.
That's correct.
And then the last couple of years, we have built in some makeup days for snow days and prior to the end of the year so that we could get students back in class before testing.
That's
Is that a concept we've maintained in this calendar?
One of the first days to do that would be omitting the in-service day on the 8th. That would be difficult to bring one of those, either the 25th or the 29th, which we've done in the past, taking away the Thursday or the Monday of the spring break. But you do still have 3 days right in here that can be added. So testing, it would be the 8th.
Okay. Other questions regarding the calendar? We will anxiously await the results of the survey. And then is it February or March that we're?
Typically February.
Thank you.
Do you need a motion to table? No, okay,
It can be a report only.
sounds great.
Next, we have the state mileage reimbursement rate.
It has gone up for the calendar year 2022 from 56 cents to 58.5.
I move to adopt the state mileage rate for district reimbursement at 58.5 cents as set forth by the state of Nebraska.
Second.
Thank you, Allison. Is there any discussion? Jody, please call the roll.
Kara?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes, that motion passes, and we now move to the district cash flow report.
In short, the district is in a very good position. One of the things that you can see from the cash flow report is that there are really 2 times when the district receives an influx of cash. That is usually for all of you as well. If you're a property owner and you pay property taxes, not in an escrow, but on a quarterly or annual, semi-annual basis, pay them in April and you pay them in March. And as you can see, cash flow right here from 8 million to 13 million exhibits that. And then you can see at the end of the year that we don't anticipate, the expenditures that we normally do, okay? So as we start with the ending balance, September of 10 million, we anticipate that the ending balance will be very close to that coming next year, all right? One of the things that you need to recognize as a board is there is a percentage as you get bigger. You're by statute only allowed to have so much in cash reserve. And that typically is 25% of your annual general fund budget. So if you take that 41 to 45 million, which is anticipated, and take 25% of that, that's what you can have in reserve. I always recommend that because you could have a catastrophic event. You'd have to amend your budget to spend it, but at least you have the cash in reserve to spend. There could be a time when the unicameral does something with state aid. Keep in mind, 40+% of your budget is state aid. It is dependent upon the unicameral to approve that every year. If that was to lessen for whatever reason, you have cash reserve to help you tie over into a new system. So cash flow, in short, again, the district is in a very good position. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Dr. Hawk. Let's talk about district housing next.
Well, we have a bunch. And this past year, we set a record again. 420 homes were built and occupied during the 2021 calendar year. As you can see, that's the highest number of occupied in 1 year difference. If you take this average for the last 5 years, that's 370 homes per year. What I tell new candidates as we interview them, Bennington, the city of Bennington is approximately 650 to 700 homes. Very similar to the city of Arlington, city of Fort Calhoun. If you take a 2-year average here, 740 homes. Our community grows the size of Arlington, Fort Calhoun, and Bennington in every 2 years. If you take that on a student populace, 300 to 325, Fort Calhoun is about 650 students. Bennington grows the size of Fort Calhoun in total every 2 years. That's the type of growth you're looking at. When we look with developers, we know that we have a difference of about 2,700 homes that are platted or being graded and already platted. We anticipate about 1,200 of those opening up later this fall and early next spring. And we anticipate the other 1,500 in the next 2 to 4 years. that too is higher than we normally have had. So as you can see here, the Copper Creek has been very slow to develop. But Kempton Creek, there are Kempton Creek 1, 2, and 3. Kempton Creek 3 right now is the Logaman development, which is waiting for a name. Woodsonia has the ground that is next to State Street, but it's also purchased ground next to Middle School North, okay? And then we have Evergreen, which is a new development in the last 2 months. That is Sweet Briar land, but that is the land that's on Military, on the, I'll call it 168th and Military. It is the northeast corner. And then 4 developments that are closer to the Anchor Point area and Middle School South. That is the development next to Middle School South that is purchased by Celebrity. And it's 2 of Majestic Point. Majestic Point 178 and Majestic Point East. Those are an additional close to 800 homes. So all total is most homes under construction in December by 2 over last year, and most homes built by more than 20 over the previous 2 years. It probably goes without saying that is why we're looking at more facilities and the methods in which to build those facilities in the near future. Are there any questions on the housing report?
There are none. Thank you for the update, for the sobering update.
Yeah, more shock than
Next, we have the superintendent evaluation by statute and policy. Function of the board is to conduct superintendent evaluation at least annually for incumbent superintendents and twice a year on new superintendents. This process was captained by the former president. So Val, I'll turn it over to you for review.
Sure, thank you. The officers of the board had partnered with the superintendent to think a little bit about the process of performance evaluation for the superintendent. We did a couple of additional things this year from a process standpoint that I'm hopeful that the board thinks were productive. Dr. Hawk did provide a self-evaluation as part of the evaluation process for the board this year, in addition to board members providing evaluation on the 7 criteria for the superintendent. What is part of the board packet is a summation of the findings from the data from the 5 board members who participated in the evaluation process. So you can see some reflection around those 7 criteria here, which did align, which I thought was a positive thing with some of the perceptions of the superintendent, which were provided. And you do see that in the narrative here, namely areas of notable strong performance from the executive leader of our school district around educational leadership in business and finance, demonstrated perhaps even in the reports that we have just seen, strong analytical skills that have allow the Board of Education to have information needed to continue to make key capital decisions and growth decisions for the district, both from a building standpoint and of course also from a personnel standpoint. And then in terms of educational leadership, the superintendent certainly has a very strong team of leaders around this district. And I think board members noted in the performance evaluation, the superintendent of the year recognition is certainly reflective of the strong performance from an education leadership standpoint in our district. You'll note in the narrative as well, just thoughts about the ever-increasing need to have strong growth and development around communications with key constituencies in our district as we continue to grow and as the business becomes ever more sophisticated and complex. That is, of course, something the board and superintendent agree will continue to be an area of focus well into the future. So thank you
for the input from all partners in the process.
I would like to thank the board for their input, and certainly some of these growth opportunities will be reflected in goals that will be coming before the board next month.
This is opportunity for any other questions or discussion regarding the superintendent evaluation. Hearing none, we will proceed to the certificated negotiated agreement for 2022-23. The Building and Finance Committee met with the BEA a number of times in what I would say were really constructive sessions regarding last year's contract. Appreciate the cooperation with the BEA to get to an agreement that that all parties are looking to ratify. So, Dr. Hawk, can you maybe give some summary highlights of that agreement?
Absolutely. The base pay is going to go up $600. This is a one-year agreement as typical. That equates to almost $1 million and close to 4.2% increase when you consider movement on the salary scale, the addition of a column to the addition of column and steps to the salary scale, and the insurance and retirement benefit packages that go along with that. This is very comparable and competitive with some of our neighbors as we move forward.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to approve the contract.
I move to approve the terms and conditions of employment, also known as negotiated agreement, for the 2022-23 school term between the Bennington Board of Education and the Bennington Education Association.
Thank you, Valerie. Is there a second?
Second.
That was Kara.
It's in stereo. That was in stereo.
Oh.
We'll go with Kara. Thank you. Any further discussion on this topic? Joey, please call the roll.
Allison?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Kara?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
That motion is approved. To round out our regular agenda, we have personnel actions on resignation and hiring.
We have one for certificate of staff that's before you this evening.
I move to accept the resignation of Stephanie Jenkins from her assignment, and thanks for your years of service to the district.
Thank you, Kara, and Valerie, second. Any discussion? Joey, please call the roll.
Heather? Yes. Valerie?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Kara?
Yes.
Before we get into hiring, it is noted that many of the districts use this, put this agenda item in consent agenda. And so it might be something that the board entertains in the future to put this forward into the consent agenda and not have it as a separate agenda.
In fact, I would take that for, that would be my inclination. If any board member has an issue with adding that to consent agenda, please just let me know privately and we can discuss what might be best for the board there. So we do have a hire for support staff.
I move to accept the recommendation of the administration and approve hiring of support staff personnel for the 2021.
Yes.
22.
Current
Thank you.
school year.
Perfect. School year, pending background checks is presented. Holly Hassan is district transportation on step 1 of this year.
Thank you, Val. I will second that. Any further discussion? Jody, please call the roll.
Allison?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Kara?
Yes.
Heather? Yes. Valerie?
Yes.
Motion carries. And we also have hires for certificate staff.
Move to accept the recommendation of the administration and approve the hiring of personnel for the 2022-23 school year, pending into conditional on our school year's budget approval as presented. Allie Carlson, elementary. Taylor Dowline, also elementary. Christine Young, elementary special education. Megan Schmidt-Schwing, elementary as well. Lindsay Pullman, middle school. Andy Scott, middle school. Christine Bickford, middle school. Allison Schnorr, middle school. Amy Sather, middle school counselor. Taylor Garreau, district speech path. Eden Rucker, middle school teacher. That is the list. That was the wrong inflection at the end.
Second?
Thank you, Valerie, and second from Heather. Any further discussion? Jody, please call the roll.
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Kara?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
And we also have opportunity to continue our participation with the Convening program with a couple of hires proposed in that area.
I move to enter into an agreement with University of Nebraska Omaha and MOAC to obtain instructional services for personnel during 2022-23 school year, pending and conditional on that year's budget approval as presented. Alyssa Callahan, elementary cadre, and Taylor Niles, also elementary cadre.
Second.
Thank you, Valerie, and again, thank you, Heather, for a second. Discussion?
I'm a fan of the cadre.
We are too.
Jody, please call the roll.
Allison?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Kara?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
That concludes our formally scheduled business. Do we need to coordinate times for any committee meetings, or does curriculum need to?
Curriculum will be meeting, we'll send out an email for that prior to the next regular board meeting.
And I'm sure building and finance will continue to be as needed on construction.
That is
facility
correct.
matters. The next regular board meeting of this board will be on February 14th, right here at 6 p.m. All those in favor?
Yeah.